This episode of The Shift is sponsored by LinkedIn. As a B2B marketer, you know how noisy the ad space can be. Well, it's time you had a marketing platform built specifically for you. That's LinkedIn Ads, the platform where you can cut through the noise by precisely reaching the professionals who are more likely to find your ad relevant. Target your ideal audience by job title, industry, company, and more. Stand out with LinkedIn Ads and start converting your B2B audience into high-quality leads today. LinkedIn Ads allow you to build the right relationships, drive results, and reach your customers in a respectful environment. You'll have direct access to and build relationships with decision makers, 1 billion members, 180 million senior level executives, and 10 million C-level executives. You'll be able to drive results with targeting and measurement tools that are built specifically for B2B. In technology, LinkedIn generated 2 to 5 times higher return on ad spend than other social media platforms. And you'll work with a partner who respects the B2B world that you operate in. 79% of B2B content marketers said LinkedIn produces the best results for paid media. Throughout my career on magazines, digital media, and now podcasts, LinkedIn has been invaluable. It's given me direct access to people and ideas that have helped shape the Shift podcast and newsletter and seen it grow into the thriving hub for midlife women that it is today. Stand out with LinkedIn Ads and start converting your B2B audience into high-quality leads today. We'll even give you $100 credit on your next campaign. Go to linkedin.com/theshift to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/theshift. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Hello and welcome to The Shift, the podcast that aims to tell the no-holds-barred truth about being a woman post-40. Created and hosted by me, writer and broadcaster, Sam Baker. Today's guest is the queen of embracing the second chapter. Fearne Cotton started young. She became a children's TV presenter at 15, presented Top of the Pops at 19, and took over Jo Whiley's mid-morning show on Radio 1 at just 27. But it's what she's achieved since turning her back on live radio and TV that's really remarkable. In 2018, she launched the Happy Place podcast, which has since amassed over 50 million downloads. I mean, eat my heart out. And it's expanded into a festival, book club, app, and publishing imprint. As an author herself, Fearne has written several books, including the Sunday Times best-selling memoirs, Happy and Bigger Than Us. But when people talk about Fearne, they still describe her first and foremost as a broadcaster. Instead of what she is, which is a highly successful and intuitive businesswoman who has curated an entire career, business and brand around her personal passions.
The actual job bit can be unbelievably fulfilling and creative and liberating and all sorts of joyous things. But being in the public eye, I'd say is pretty much 100% dreadful.
Now she's turned her hand to fiction with Scripted, in which a chronic people pleaser learns how to say no. Frankly, I can think of a few people, including yours truly, who could take a lesson. Fearne joined me to talk about how she finally found her balance in midlife. We also discussed why being a step parent needs a rebrand, learning not to be a little bitch to yourself, respecting your energy levels as much as your bank balance, and why she loves being in her 40s. Well, before we talk about Scripted and Happy Place a bit, I just want to talk to you about how you got here. So Tell me a little bit about Little Fearne. What was Little Fearne like?
Little Fearne was a massive dreamer, like I guess a lot of little kids are. But I definitely remember thinking, like even when I was at sort of little school, I remember thinking, there's got to be more to life than this, like being in a classroom. I really remember having that feeling. And I grew up in the suburbs of London, so everything was quite sort of grey, not many trees around kind of thing, but equally not exciting like being in central London. I remember just, I had a perfectly sort of happy childhood, but I remember just thinking there's got to be like more exciting stuff going on. So I was always dreaming about things and thinking up ideas. I was probably quite bossy. I'm the oldest out of me and all my cousins. So I was always making us put on a show for the family, but I was sort of directing, producing, generally bossing everyone around, stage handling people. And I would obviously have the main part. So a lot of that kind of stuff going on. Yeah. But yeah, I was just sort of, had a very regular upbringing. Just me and my brother went to a normal school in the suburbs, 2 very hardworking parents, nothing particularly out of the ordinary.
Yeah, same, just normal. And you were the big sister?
Yes, the big, loud, quite bossy sister.
See, I'm really fascinated by family roles and how that shapes you. How do you think you were shaped by being the big sister?
I've thought about this a lot, and I guess it's that sort of chicken and egg thing. Am I like this because I'm a big sister, or did I show up like this and then I took on this role of being the sort of organised big sister? Because I am still like that in many ways. And I've got a really lovely relationship with my brother. He is the antithesis of me in every way. He's like super chilled, super quiet, really pragmatic. He's like a logical thinker. He's just the loveliest bloke. We get on really, really well, but we are so, so opposite. And I don't know if my role as being a big sister informed who I was, or I don't know. I'm not sure which way round it goes. But I think I'm a bit of a split down the middle of my mum and my dad. My dad's super, super laid back and quite happy-go-lucky, whereas my mum is sort of much more fiery and dramatic and passionate and just a lot of fire and energy. So I can do both, but I think my brother got much more sort of dad energy. He's very, very chilled. So yeah, I definitely took on. And I think also, do you know what? It's easier for me to think about, I guess, 15 onwards when I started working, because I've got, bolder, bigger memories of that time. And I think that really established who I was and even how I fit into my family, because I had to become really quite independent at a young age and able to sort of handle myself in very adult situations. So I think that probably ramped up the big sister energy even more.
Yeah, because you started work, didn't you, at 15? I mean, how were you in any way equipped for that? Because at 15, I was fucking useless, frankly.
Oh, no, I was not equipped at all. I mean, at times I don't think I am now.
No, true.
I don't know if, the job that I do is so odd. The actual job bit can be unbelievably fulfilling and creative and liberating and all sorts of joyous things. But being in the public eye, I'd say is pretty much 100% dreadful. I mean, it's fine if I have, just sort of random people come up to me and have a chat. I don't mind that bit at all. It's more like the press and any of the like negative stuff that goes with that. I've never handled well. But I think in ways it was easier when I was a tiny kid, because there was no social media and I was doing kids telly. So I was kind of left alone by the press. It wasn't really interesting enough or exciting enough. So I got away with just having a pretty free and easy time on TV until my early 20s, I'd say. So I felt maybe more equipped then. And I was really looked after by the people I worked with initially who did Disney Club and Dig It and all those kids TV shows. Were so wonderful. And they're still in my life today. Amazing woman called Maddie Darrell, who still has this huge kids production company, makes loads of kids telly. She was so nurturing and just incredible, like an incredible safety net in a weird new world that I was sort of working in. So I think if anything, it was easier back then and harder now that I'm just out there in the Wild West on my own without a Maddie going, how does this all work?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned like there was no social media, and I mean, thank God, because the 90s and the early noughties, they were tough enough without like all of that as well, all that kind of Instagram, TikTok pressure.
Yeah, it was a weird time to be. I mean, more so I'd say like the early noughties when I was kind of late teens, early 20s. I think that was a really rough time. And I think that's when magazines kind of, you know, I'm talking like maybe your Heats and stuff like that, kind of really went for women's flaws and everything was very scrutinized. Yeah. And I think that felt really quite shocking to be included in those sorts of stories and magazines. And it was kind of unavoidable back then because it was just such a huge part of popular culture. So yeah, it was all a bit of a head fuck, really. But back in the 90s, because I was sort of interviewing Bewitched or Cleopatra or something like that, I just avoided a lot of the darker side of it, thank God. But, you know, it's again, that chicken egg thing. I don't know what informed what, but I think I certainly started feeling the impact of it all in my early 20s. The pressure of it and the scrutiny and really, and this is not a feeling that is exclusive to me. I'm sure most people in the industry have felt like it at some point, but certainly in those days I thought, God, I really don't belong here. Like everyone else is coping really well and looks like they're all shiny and part of it. And I feel like a bit of an oddball amongst all this. I never quite felt like I fit in to any of it. I really tried, but none of it felt natural. Whereas now I could give a toss about fitting in anywhere. I really don't care. And I don't try and fit in. I just try and be me and have a much more peaceful existence mentally and in a sort of exterior sense, I guess, as well.
Do you think that's an age thing or a mental health recovery thing or a bit both?
I think some of it is certainly age and experience. And I packed a hell of a lot in from sort of 15 to, I don't know, when I started to really think about my mental health in my early 30s. And then some of it is absolutely born out of necessity due to just trying to feel mentally well, which has been a kind of 10 plus year process of healing and making peace with things and feeling better about myself and a whole amalgamation of stuff. But yeah, so I'd say it's probably both. And in ways it was accelerated by having a tougher time of mental health. So in ways, I guess I could be grateful for that. I had a bit of a fast track in a way, painful one, but a fast track nonetheless. And I think I actually feel quite excited about where that will take me because as I'm aging, my main aim is to keep getting braver. And I mean that probably not in the truest sense. I'm not going to go and do some heroic thing, but in terms of trying to peel back more layers and say no when I really want to, dare to take free time, which I'm not great at still. And I think age will allow me to access all of that with a bit more ease. Got lots of brilliant and interesting friends in all decades. I think intergenerational friendships are just a glorious thing. And from my friends that are in their 60s and 70s, I recently lost a friend who was 80. That seems to be true, that you do access that I don't give a shit feeling as you age. So I say, bring it on.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I was thinking about when I was like being a girly swat and doing my homework this morning, which I know that you're a girly swat too. So
I sure am. I wouldn't do a podcast without it. I'd feel freaked out.
Oh, totally. It's like, somebody said to me the other day, you do so much prep. Why do you do so much prep? And I said, I do it so that I won't need it. Because it's just a safety net, isn't it? Then you might not look at it at all.
I think you mentally feel like, and now I can take this, hour of the absolute unknown on. If I didn't have my notes or I hadn't done that prep before, I would also feel like I wasn't honouring the guest because, people are super busy. Like I interviewed Matt Haig this morning. That one's coming out soon. And, he's so busy and he's got so much going on and he's so generous with his words and his time. I would never dare think I could wing a chat like that when someone's travelled to my home or the studio, wherever we're at, and given me that time. I don't feel like it's right. So yeah, I'm the same as you. I do a hell of a lot of prep.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned him because I've interviewed him recently as well, not for this, but something else. And I was seeing a lot of parallels between you and him because that moment of realization may be completely different, but same impact. And he made a comment, and I'm not going to be able to phrase it right, but he basically said something: when you get the things that you thought you wanted, they can come with a load of crap. And then the load of crap can actually have a massive silver lining. And he's the embodiment of that. I mean,
oh my God, without a doubt. There was a line, I've written it in my notebook here. There's a line in his new book, and it says something like, don't think of the bad things as unconnected to the good. And I absolutely loved that. That's in his latest novel. I love that because I certainly had big periods of my life that I would have liked to have just pressed delete on. Like, delete, didn't happen, don't want to think about it ever again. But actually, so much good has come from a really crappy time, and even the crappy mindset that I had at the time, or whatever, like all the sort of darkness you get pulled into, a lot of it does. I can trace back the good stuff I'm doing now to that quite quickly. I mean, I love his writing. I just think he's so clever. And when I read Reasons to Stay Alive, I just thought that came into my life at just the right time. And it was just such a powerful book. And I've loved all of his fiction. And I just think he's incredible writer.
I mean, when you wrote Happy, that was your first, wasn't it? That must have been incredibly exposing. Did you feel, or did you have people around you saying, don't do that, because if you do that, you're going to be the mental health person for the rest of your life?
Yeah. I mean, I remember, and you'll remember this from back in the day, it was very much sort of said to a lot of us who were either presenters or musicians or whatever in the sort of 90s, early noughties, like, don't say anything about anything to do with yourself. Like, that was very much a thing. Just don't give anything away. It wasn't the done thing to talk about anything remotely real. And I think it was sort of partly protection and partly because you would then have to talk about it for the rest of your life. So if you talked about anything medical or whatever, you'd always get warned, oh, well, this is now going to be the thing. So I just didn't say anything ever. I would just talk about surface stuff and sunny things or whatever. So I think with Happy, I was really nervous to write it, but I think I was at the point where I thought, I've got nothing to lose. I was in such a shit place. I didn't know what I was doing. I sort of knew I didn't really want to do telly. The timeline is blurry. Like, I was probably still on the radio. I think I was, or maybe I'd left. I mean, it's all a bit of a blur because a lot of that time was really rough. So I've just sort of wiped bits out of my mind. And I've not reread that book since I wrote it. It could be absolutely awful. I've got no idea. I can't remember what's in it. I've just sort of, it was like a necessary exercise of exorcism. I just had to get this stuff out of me. And I did not think that book was going to go anywhere. I thought, who's going to be interested in reading this? Like, I'll write it. But I honestly had such low expectations. And obviously it's the book out of everything that I've written that has done the best because I think I just didn't care. And you do, of course, with each book that you write or whatever you do, become much more self-aware and self-conscious and worried about what people are going to think and yada, yada, yada. But I was extremely uncaring at that point as to what people would say or think because I just felt rubbish. So, I mean, I'd started to feel slightly better at that point, but, I don't think I felt anywhere near, I'm going to use the word normal. I don't even know what that means, but anywhere near sort of okay and balanced until like a few years ago. I think hitting 40 was a big one in a really positive way. And in the last year, even making more leaps and bounds mentally and learning more about myself and forgiving myself and accepting myself and all the stuff that we've all got to do. But I think that just carries on forever. But that was a really good starting point writing that book because at least I was admitting, oh yeah, feel really awful. And actually, I might even dare to use the word depression. You know, I'd never even said that word out loud at that point. It was a good turning point writing that book. And I'm glad that people have connected with it.
I mean, it's kind of crazy, isn't it, how much things have changed since you wrote that book, that conversation. Like you say, at that point, it wasn't really the done thing to like lay yourself bare like that if you were in the public eye, or indeed if you weren't. It just, people didn't talk about it. Work, you kept your problems out of work, you know, out of public life. And now it's completely normal in many circles, not all, to just kind of go.
I know. I wish it had been different in a way back then, because I had such an excruciating time when I was at Radio 1 because of that. I couldn't tell anyone. I didn't feel I could tell anyone because we didn't know that was a possibility back then, that you could say to someone you're working with, look, I am really struggling here and I don't know what to do. And I'm so glad, and there's still a long way to go, but I'm so glad that there is at least a crack in the door. There's an opening for people to have that chat if they feel comfortable to. And I've done countless talks over the last 7-8 years in workplaces, all different, from banks to creative industries, where I'll go in and answer questions, and, you know, not as an expert, but just sort of an experiential chat about mental health. And I'm so glad that the tides have changed. But back then, I massively struggled in that situation of feeling so incapable of doing my job and talking publicly to millions of people every day, whilst sort of slowly corroding inside. And I didn't tell anyone, didn't tell a soul. Sometimes I'd sort of get up and go to the toilet while songs are on and just sort of sit there. But I certainly wouldn't tell anyone why or what was going on in my head. I just sort of turned on the Radio 1 switch and would go, hey, hi everyone, what's going on? But would feel awful.
So was that the catalyst for you walking away from live TV and radio?
No, not at all. I still kind of persevered. And actually, I hadn't experienced any panic at that point. It was just all very low mood and self-loathing and just lots of darkness. But I stayed on for a bit longer. Then I left when I was pregnant with my daughter, who's about to turn 9. And then a little bit after that, as I started to get back into work, I don't know when, but literally out of the blue, I started getting panic attacks, which I've wondered, and this is me sort of hypothesizing. I've got no clue if this is a thing, but I wonder if it was me coming out of a period of depression, and it was like a stark wake up to, oh God, now I've got to sort all this stuff out and this mental stuff, rather than just being in it, because it felt like a very harsh switch to, oh, and now I'm panicked. And the panic attacks back at that period of my life in my early 30s were thick and fast. And I was being triggered if I went too fast in a vehicle, or if I was certainly on live TV and radio. And I persevered for a bit on live radio. I was covering for Zoe Ball for maybe a year on off. But then it got to the point where I was fine when I was on air, but it was the run up. I couldn't sleep at night. I was having panic attacks on off for hours all night long. When I was going to the studio, like, it was horrendous. And I wasn't sleeping for like days at a time. And I was like, I'm going to get ill if I keep doing this. And also, why am I putting myself through this? Like, this is insane. So, I told Radio 2, look, I'm just not mentally capable of doing this live stuff anymore, and stood down from, a really great job. And also to cover for Zoe, she's like my kid hero. Like, she's my radio queen. It was torture. But I do think you've got to make these decisions for your health, mental and physical health, because they're all intertwined. So that was a bit later down the line. But I haven't really had a panic attack in a while now. Like, I don't know, 6 months or something, which is quite good and due to varying factors. But that was a particularly sort of intense time, because I was, sort of trying to push through it all.
I mean, it's a huge deal as well, isn't it, leaving a big job like that? Radio 1 and then stepping away from Radio 2 altogether. I mean, it's not just the money, is it? It's the status as well. Did you know who you were if you weren't Fearne off the radio?
For a while, no. I mean, when I left Radio 1, I didn't know what I was doing. I really worried, what am I going to do? Like, what is going to happen to me here? What is going on? And it took me a long while to kind of find my confidence to really lean into doing my own things, and the catalyst was writing the book Happy, but it has been a very slow burn over the last 8 years of us even working out what Happy Place was, starting the podcast, and now building it into something that takes up, 99% of my work life, which I'm so grateful for and I love. And I don't feel anywhere near lost. I'm so driven with what we're doing. It's passion-led, it's heartfelt. I'm excited by it. I don't feel panicked about any of it. Occasionally, I'll get like a flick to the ego where someone will go, oh God, I haven't seen you on telly for years. What do you do these days? And I'll go for 1 second like, that really hurt. And then I'm like, oh, I don't care, whatever. Like, oh yeah, I'm doing bits and bobs. It's all good. Whereas I know that I've never been sort of busier or more driven or more determined in my life. But obviously it's not what it used to be. I'm not like in the Daily Mail sidebar anymore because I'm far too boring, which is no skin off my nose. But I think for some people that means I've died. But I'm so grateful that I got essentially like a part 2. I got another chapter out of my career, and I'm so grateful because it's not a given that just because you've been on the TV for a long while doesn't mean anything. People lose their jobs all the time and are never seen again. I feel very lucky that things just sort of fell into place. It wasn't like I was given opportunities, but things just sort of fell into place and I found my way again and I found a rhythm that worked for me. Yeah, I'm more grateful than I've ever been.
You've got a part 2, but you made that part 2. I mean, it started maybe with Happy and you'll realise, I guess, did that make you realise that actually lots of other people feel like this and lots of other people want to hear other people's mental health stories?
Yeah, I think that it took me a long time to realise that. And actually, I think most of that feeling came from friends of mine, especially when I was talking around panic attacks in a book that I wrote called Calm. A lot of my friends who I saw as really robust and sturdy and consistent said, oh God, why have we never had this chat? Like, I have this. And I was like, you? Oh my God. And that was so important for me to have that understanding that all the people that I thought were coping had got shit going on. And I think we were all collectively coming out of a bit of a weird trap of feeling we couldn't tell people what was going on with us. And now, I have these amazing free-flowing conversations with loads of my mates and we talk about all sorts of gnarly things and weird thoughts we have and worries and whatever. And with my female and male friends, which is the even bigger change over the last few years, that feels really lovely and really healthy. And with my cousins, I've had some amazing chats with my cousins who I've known since they were born. And we're sort of now doing, like real talk. We're not just chatting about memories or surface stuff. And I think that's been the biggest change to me. It's obviously amazing knowing lots of people out there have connected with the work that I'm doing and I get to have nice chats with people in the supermarket or a Happy Place festival. But it's the people that I thought I knew that have really opened my eyes to, we're all going through stuff and it's invisible a lot of the time. We don't know it.
I think it's that thing, isn't it, that if you're a bit of a coper or a fixer or achiever or whatever, you're the person who keeps all the balls in the air. People just don't even think there's going to be anything wrong. And if you do kind of try and say, certainly in the past, like saying not so much now, if you've tried to say, I'm struggling a bit with this or whatever, people have kind of gone, oh, you'll be fine. All right, I'll be fine.
Yeah. Or I guess I had this sort of weird secondary thing from my work where people might go, well, you got to moan about, like, you got a great job and you've got a roof over your head. And like, yes. And I mean, obviously it goes without saying, I'm incredibly grateful that I've got a roof over my head and there's food in the fridge. Like that is a given every day. I am utterly grateful that I can feed my children. And, and do the odd nice thing here and there. But I think we used to much more often conflate that stuff with what's going on in our brains, whether that's chemical, hereditary, circumstantial, they've all got a slightly different flavor to them. But I think people do that less so today. And that's because we've seen many brilliantly talented, successful, adored, established individuals take their own lives. So that sum doesn't add up anymore all of a sudden. So I think we're starting to get that one. Although I think that there's still a little bit of, a bit more unpicking to do with it. But again, I was talking to Matt Haig about it, sort of saying most authors would look to him and say, you've sold over 10 million books. And, even I, when I first saw the announcement, was like, oh man, I wish one of my books would sell 10 million. And then you say to him, does it impact your happiness? And he's like, for a day, maybe. But it doesn't keep away the demons. It doesn't stop you self-loathing. It doesn't take away other areas of envy. It doesn't take away the pain from the past. It can't. And we all kind of know this, but I think we still get lured into the trap of thinking that it must be some real good, solid foundation for mental health. And of course it's not.
Yeah, it's like, and whenever you talk to anybody about depression or anxiety or panic attacks, who is on the face of it successful and an achiever, they always, and Matt is a case in point, they always sort of apologize, or they always say, make a joke about their diamond shoes or their tiny violins, or because there's still, even though how much we know that depression has got nothing to do or very little to do with that, there's still a sense that I'm not entitled to be depressed.
I know, which is not healthy in the slightest. It's just not healthy. Like, if we're going to have healthy conversations about this stuff, I think it's got to be unpicked. And I guess I'm fortunate in the sense that, I don't come from money. I'm from a working class family. I grew up in a very average way, and I had a perfectly normal childhood. And I've got lots of gorgeous memories of blissful happiness of, going camping with my cousins, or, going to the local drama club with my gang of mates there, or whatever, which has no correlation to success or adoration or money or any of it. And most of my happy moments now that I can think back to, like I had this afternoon last week of absolute happiness, and it was totally spontaneous. Me and my husband both had an afternoon off, and I'd usually find something to do, but I thought, no, I'm going to make myself not do anything. And we got Lime bikes and just cycled around, but we didn't know where we were going. We were just sort of cycling without a destination, which I haven't done in years, like since I was probably a kid. And I felt childlike, and I was cycling and sort of grinning. And he was like, oh my God, look at your face. What's going on? I was like, I am just so fucking happy. And I've allowed myself this moment of not next project, what's happening next. And it was sunny, and everyone was sat outside pubs, and it was just sort of like a nothingy moment, but it was so perfect. And I don't think 10 million books, or the next goal would be 15 million books, or whatever you then want to aspire to, can give you that feeling. I don't think it can.
It's like you were saying earlier when you touched on bravery. And I think that feeling allowed or entitled to give yourself that is quite a thing, that to not be beating yourself up because you're not working for 3 hours.
I mean, I still do it, which is why this is like early days for me, but I really want to do that more. And I think because I've been in the public eye so long, I always hear this kind of outside voice that isn't me, that is other people going, well, I haven't got 3 hours off. Or who do you think you are cycling around London with aimlessly? Like, I've really got that voice in my head all the time. And that's probably because a lot of the time when I was on the radio, you've got this horrible big text screen with messages coming in all day, or on social media, people do say shitty things to you without knowing who you really are as a human. And at my mental health's worst, I would take it all sort of very personally and verbatim and go, God, I must be a horrible, entitled person if that's the case. And I think with age, I'm starting to go, do Do you know what? If one of my mates, so I know loads of people that work really hard or are really passionate about what they do, whatever, if they said, I'm going to take a few hours off, I'd go, have a really gorgeous time. And I'd really, really mean it. I'd want to see them have like an amazing afternoon off or day off or God forbid 2 weeks off. And not a bone in my body would be judging them. So anyone that is judging me, I really shouldn't be listening to. But I think in the moment, it is easier said than done. And I think for me, having had that kind of outside opinion for so long, it's just going to take a bit of work to truly unpick it and to get brave with that one.
Are you still judging yourself a bit?
Yeah, I think I do. I think I do judge myself. Sometimes in a healthy way, in terms of, even if I think about my writing, I would love to keep growing and keep getting better forever. That would be the plan. So I would never go, that is so brilliant what I've written. I'm really happy with it and good on me. I would never, ever think that naturally. The sort of motivating feeling is, right, and what you're going to do next, and it might need to be a bit better than that, actually. So let's see what we can do. And even with, every episode of the podcast, of which I've now done a lot, I always think, the next one can be a bit better than that. And the next one you could listen a bit harder, or the next one you could really think about what they're saying and where you're going to take this next. So I don't mind that level of judgment, because I do think it is driving me to do better. And I find that exciting rather than daunting. But sometimes I am just like a little bitch to myself.
Yeah. Yeah, like the way we talk to ourselves, like we'd never talk to other people.
Never.
Way. Were you a people pleaser like Jade, your character in Scripted?
Yes. And I can still be. I think that's why it was so easy to write Jade, because although she is not me at all, and I've really tried to establish that she's not me, I think you've got to work with feelings that you understand, especially for a first fiction. I was like, I need to write about something that I absolutely feel to the core of me. And I think many men and women, but maybe more women, really fall into this category of not really being able to say no, whether it's a confidence thing or a worry thing that you're going to upset other people. Or sometimes you feel like you should be doing something more worthy or helpful with your time, so you overfill your diary and to sort of do stuff that you don't have the capacity to do. So I do have a lot of similarities with that layer of Jade. And I've made her quite a bit younger than me, because I wanted her to learn all these lessons a lot earlier than I did. And I think early 30s is an interesting time, because there's a lot of pressure on women, like, where are you at career-wise? Or like, have you met someone? Or are you thinking about having kids? And all these intrusive questions that come in. So I wanted Jade to sort of figure all this out then, rather than I've been doing it in my early 40s. So I'm glad that I gave her the opportunity to do it that bit earlier.
Yeah, and you managed to do it a decade before me, so good on you.
Really? Well, I'm still doing it, to be honest, Sam. It's not like I've cracked it. I'm still really, I'm cognizant of it, which is the difference between who I was in my 30s. But sometimes I'm still not like walking the walk.
How are your boundaries? Because boundaries are a tough thing, aren't they? I really struggle.
Yeah, they're really tough. I'm with some people, I find it easy enough, and then with others, not so much. And they're probably more long-standing relationships. I think I'm getting better at boundaries, and that's also come with motherhood, because I want to spend a lot of time with my kids and be really present with them and do really like make good memories with them. So I can be boundaried in a work capacity, not all the time, but when it really matters, so that I do get that time. And then other times I'm not. And do you know what? Someone said something so interesting to me. Was it even yesterday? Yesterday or the day before? I was working with this amazing energy healer, as you do, for this. It was for a work project, but so I get to meet all these interesting people. And this wonderful lady said to me, if you think of energy in the same way that you do money, would you be spending your energy in quite the same way? I was like, holy shit. No, I would not. I am literally throwing it away. I'm literally like dishing it out to strangers on the street, to people in the supermarket, to people I'm working with, obviously to my friends and family first, because I live in a house with 4 kids and a husband and various animals. but I am literally just throwing it. And it's like, wow, why am I so free about this? This is quite an important thing because I hit a wall all the time and get really burnt out. And I'm a bit sort of perimenopausal, so I've got a bit of that going on. So I then really feel it in my immune system. And it's like a full-bodied experience of I'm really burning out. So I've got to think more deeply about that one. And I think her giving me that little visual, made quite an impact.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of looking at it because I definitely found that with perimenopause and then long COVID, I started to really understand spoon theory, and it's like if you've only got a certain amount of spoons, how are you going to use them? You've got 10 spoons to get you through the week. And if you throw 8 spoons at Monday and Tuesday and work, that doesn't give you a lot left for anything else. And it's really salutary.
It's really weird how we work now in comparison to back in the day, because I think it felt more structurally boundaried back in the day because we didn't have smartphones with email and all that stuff going on. So when I got home from filming a TV thing or a shoot or whatever, I'd be done. And I would, kick back. Obviously, I didn't have kids back then as well, so it's slightly easier, but I'd like kick back and watch a show or whatever. Now, I could be emailed all day, every day, at any time of day, or I would have ones in my inbox that I hadn't dealt with. So I feel like there's no real cutoff anymore. And partly that is down to my own, I was going to say choice. It's kind of like lack of discipline, really. But some of it is because of this pressure I think we all feel. And maybe again, especially as women, that we should be high achieving and that we're the generation that can really shift the dial and do things differently. And it just all feels so full on. And it's almost now sort of alien language to say, do you know what? I'm just really content with how things are at the moment. Because I think, again, this is more social media driven and perhaps even comes from a different generation to ours. But it's like, how far reaching is what you're doing and what's next and how much more can you put it out to the world? And everything's like, go get them and next and how big and how loud and how much engagement and like all this language we wouldn't have known back in the day, engagement and followers and numbers and whatever it might be. It feels like there is no end goal with that. It's just relentless and never ending. So I'm not switching off enough. I'm just like rattled the whole time with like, well, what are we doing next and how are we doing it? And there's no off button. And I think back in the day, there was this like, oh, and now I'm home.
The response to all the emails is, well, just because someone sent it, you don't have to reply. Yeah, so instead I can sit there with this pressure on my shoulder because I know it's there and it's stuff I've got to do. I'm aware that I have put some of it on myself because I've done this thing. What am I doing next? I never go, oh, you did that? Great. Never.
No, I don't. And I wish I could change that. I'm trying to write another novel now amongst, I don't know how many other jobs I'm doing, 12, 14, could be more. And I'm like, what am I doing? And I say to myself all the time, what the hell am I doing here? This is all absolutely bonkers. And some days it all feels really doable. And some days it really doesn't. So I'm not even sure why I'm doing a lot of it some of the time. And some of it is for absolute pure creative joy. Certainly the writing, it is total escapism to me. And equally with the podcast, I feel such a level of gratitude that I get to sit with a different person every week and like hear a totally different story. I will never tire of that. And I've done 6.5 years of it and I feel like I'm just getting started. So there's bits of it that remain purely joyful, but there's some stuff where it really pushes me to, empty, going back to that energy exhaustion. It pushes me to absolute emptiness. And that is something that, again, I want to keep getting brave and trying to carve out more time where I'm just allowing myself to rest, which feels like this sort of forbidden thing these days, that it's such an awful luxury to rest. But I'd love to rest a bit more.
Do you ever feel like Happy Place is such an enormous success from outside and it's growing and it's becoming an empire, do you ever kind of look at it and think, actually, this is a little bit Frankenstein's monster?
Not at the moment, because we've purposefully gone as slowly as we can with all of it. I think there was the temptation to try and do 10 things right at the start, but we didn't. You know, we let the podcast really bed in before, and we kind of knew that it could be more than a podcast almost from the get-go. Not with any grand ideas, but just like, this feels like an area of interest that could be multifaceted. You know, with the festival, we've remained over the last 5 years just doing the two, one in London, one in Manchester. There is, you know, a demand to do maybe one in Scotland or one real down south or wherever. We could, but we would be pushing ourselves to the brink and stretching our team because it's not massive. So I think we all feel like what we're doing is still coming from the right place and it's still got the heart and soul that it started with. I think if that got compromised, I would worry.
How has your being in your 40s changed you?
I love being in my 40s. I fucking love it. I 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 was so infantilized for so many years because I started out on kids' telly. And up until like, even after I had kids, people were still often treating me like a kid, or I'd get sent freebies that were like quite teeny. I was like, I've got 4 kids. That's what? Like, just so bizarre. And I think in my 40s, you can't infantilize someone in their 40s, I don't think. I feel I've done enough, not only work on myself, but also switching up my career to express authentically who I am, or at least giving that a shot as to who I would like to put into, what parts of myself I want to put out there. So I feel like my 40s have allowed me to do it. And I do think there's that cliche thing of you hit 40 and go, bloody hell, I'm 40. How did that happen? And you do take a step back. And I wrote a book called Bigger Than Us as I turned 40. It went through the years of sort of 39 and 40. And it was a breakthrough moment for me. The book was a real deep dive into, without this sounding utterly wanky, like into spirituality, all the different corners of what that means. It absolutely changed everything, writing that book and hitting that for all the cliche reasons. And now I just want to keep doing therapy every week, committing to looking at the dark corners of myself and my brain and exploring them rather than fearing them, and just being more me, which again could sound wanky or self-indulgent, but I think we all just want to be ourselves, and it sometimes feels like it's increasingly harder to do so with the pressures of like what it is to be a human today. And I'm just going to keep getting hopefully older and a bit wiser and not worrying about, you know, slightly saggier skin, or as my daughter called them this week, my witch hat boobs, which are getting pointier.
Great,
and yeah, she's like, your boobs are like little witch hats. She's 8. Like I don't mind about any of that. I just like the feeling of knowing who I am. And I think that's growing with age.
I was listening to an interview earlier with you where you said that you had never felt comfortable in your own skin when you were younger. Do you now?
Most of the time. I think being in the public eye as a young woman in the time that I was, and I've spoke to many other presenters and musicians who are around that same era, I think we're all slightly traumatized and body dysmorphic. I can't speak for everybody, but it was a horrible time to be in the public eye. And we didn't have all the amazing role models that we do today who are talking and shouting about body confidence, which is so needed. It was one narrative, and it was to pull apart the female body. And obviously I had a history of eating disorders. I've talked about this quite a bit before, but I was bulimic for a very long time, and I felt awful in my own skin most of the time. And I was usually, you know, sat on a sofa next to an extremely tiny and gorgeous, styled and made up pop star. And I just felt like a freak a lot of the time. And like, I'm just some random person from the suburbs who doesn't have any of those qualities. I just felt like awful in my own skin. So I really didn't have a great time of it back then. But I've done a hell of a lot of therapy on all that stuff. So most of the time at this age, I'm just really grateful that I feel good in terms of I can get up in the morning, have a stretch, move about freely without too much pain. And I feel really grateful for that. But there are days, of course, where you have like a hangover from the past, I guess, like a bit of a, your demons pop up and I can just feel a bit, or, just not as comfy in my own skin. But most of the time I feel all right. And maybe that again is coming with age.
What do you do when you have those days?
I'll probably go for a walk, which I think is a great tonic for any discomfort mentally or physically. It's just, if you can, get out into the fresh air and walk. That one usually does the trick for me. And I might listen to a podcast, or I might just have silence and just not really think about anything, just let my brain wander about. Quite lucky I can talk to my husband. He's a really good communicator and listener and pretty pragmatic. So I usually will talk to him about stuff that's troubling me. And sometimes I just think, look, I'll be all right tomorrow. I just got to get through to the end of the day, get to bed. And then I know I won't feel like it in the morning because it's never longer than a day anymore. Ever, ever, ever. Whereas, had years of it. So I've certainly done my time with that one. But I know that the next day will be all right. So I can just get to the end of the day.
And before I ask you the questions I always ask at the end, I just wanted to quickly ask you a tiny little bit about step parenting. I'm a stepmom too, and I was 26 when I got my stepson. You were quite young too when you got your two.
I was 29, yeah.
What did that teach you, do you think? How did it change you?
Oh, God. I mean, it was a steep learning curve in terms of, so many things. As I was young, like you were, I saw it as a huge novelty when I first met my husband. And I was like, oh my God, we're going to Giraffe for lunch. And then we're going to go to the cinema and watch a kids film. And I sort of couldn't believe I was doing it. It just all felt completely bizarre. I think it wasn't until I had my firstborn, Rex, who is now 11, that things felt very real. Like, oh, I need to bear in mind how this is going to affect my stepchildren. This is a massive deal for them. And the responsibility hit home so hard at that point. And that then we had to work out, right, how are we going to do this? And how are we going to ensure that our kids all feel like proper siblings, like no half about it. I want them to grow up as siblings. And how do I split my time fairly between them? And, I haven't stopped thinking like that. It's still very much the case now. We've actually got all 4 kids living with us at the moment. It's a constant juggle, emotions and different personalities and ages, but I wouldn't change it for the world. I could always get quite emotional talking about my stepkids. I feel like it's such a privilege, and the conversation around step parenting hasn't historically been a positive one. And it's been one of the greatest gifts of my life, being a step parent. I love those kids so much. And it's a slightly different relationship to the one I have with my kids, which gives it a whole other layer of interest. It feels like such a privilege that I get to guide them in any sense in life, and that they know they could come to me. It just feels, and I don't know, I have got lucky in some respects because they're both incredible kids. And I'm saying kids, they're 18 and 22. They're grown-ass adults, but they're incredible humans. And I have a great relationship with both of them. And all 4 kids adore each other. I mean, the little ones idolize the big ones. Rex is just basically trying to be Arthur at the moment. He's dressing like him. And when the Euros was on, he went, yeah, can you just drop me around Enzo's house, who's Arthur's best mate? Because he was like, yeah, they're all around there watching the football. And I was like, no, because you're 11 and they're 22 and they're all getting pissed. And he's like, no, just drop me around there. I was like, Rex, I can't do that. Like, he just wants to be in that gang. But they all love each other. And it just, when we're all together in the house, everything feels, it's hectic, but everything feels right. Jesse's at his absolute happiest. He just wants everyone there the whole time. And I think it's obviously hard for him as they get older, sort of slightly letting them go because they're doing their own thing now. But it's been one of the joys of my life, I'd say, being a step parent.
Oh, I totally agree. I feel like really, really lucky to have mine in my life.
It's the best, isn't it?
It really is. And like you say, it gets such terrible press in all directions.
It doesn't. It just doesn't have to be like that. It doesn't have to be like that. I think it can, like, I love the work that Kate Ferdinand's done around this topic of just talking about blended families in a really healthy way, not dodging over the difficult bits, because of course there are many challenges that come with it and hard things you've got to navigate. And, you know, especially when they're little, sort of going from home to home and all of that stuff, the practical stuff is really, like, the nitty gritty is not fun. And it's really tricky at times. But if I focus solely on the relationship that I have with my stepchildren, I just feel incredibly lucky.
Right, questions I always ask at the end. What's your emotional age?
Christ. My emotional age. Do you know what? It varies daily. Today, it's like firmly in the 42, about to turn 43. But some days it could be 16.
Why is it firmly 42 today?
Probably because I've had some really good chats like this, and I'm in the headspace where wanting to sort of tackle big subjects and topics, and I'm grounded and, talking. And like, this is the medium for me that works, like chatting, getting stuff out of my physical body. So I think that is all of it's processing to me.
Give us a book recommendation.
I am currently reading All Fours and I cannot put it down. Have you read it?
I love it. Yeah, she's been on the pod. Yeah, I love it.
Oh my God. It is so... Now, that is a brave book. It's brave. It's bonkers. It's so true and gnarly. And, I love it. I love it.
It's so good. I feel like it's surreal. In fact, I feel a bit jealous that you're reading it at your age, because I'm now the other side of menopause, and I feel like I would love to have read it when I was revving up.
It's incredible. I've literally told everyone that I know to get it. I've helped with the sales a lot on that one.
Yeah, I feel like I've been a one-woman publicity machine, but two. Yeah. What advice would you give younger women?
I would say, like yourself. As that sounds really flippant and easy to do, and it's really not. But from all the work that I've done on myself and in the mental health sector and looking at well-being, I don't think any of the stuff you can do, whether it's mindfulness or whatever, will touch the sides unless you can attempt to like yourself. I think it just bypasses you. Like, you do the experience and it's gone. But if there's a foundation of acceptance of who you are and your past, and that you can gently play around with liking yourself, then that's when things start to stick.
How old do you reckon you were when you managed that?
41? 42? It's been very recent.
Who is your old bird role model?
I've got so many. The other day I interviewed Zandra Rhodes.
Me too.
How amazing is she?
She's incredible. She's incredible.
So incredible. I want to live as vibrantly and boldly and bravely as she always has, actually. I don't think this is something that she's acquired. I think it's who she's always been. And she's very matter of fact about big things, which I love too.
Yeah, she's amazing. What's your superpower?
Being honest, I think. And I've got even more honest as I've gotten older. But I think I've always been honest. And it's maybe why I've always felt that even when I was on probably kids' TV, some people really liked me and some people really didn't, because I wasn't capable of playing the game or morphing into what people needed me to be. I couldn't morph into the sort of glamorous TV presenter that was expected. I think I've always, like, my honesty has always been something that has naturally had to lead the way for me. And now it serves me greatly, but I think it was a lot harder to be honest when I was younger.
Last one. How many fucks do you give?
Still too many for my age, but I'm decluttering those fucks as I go. So hopefully if I speak to you this time next year, there'll be less fucks in the can.
Oh, we'll have to make a date and do that.
Let's do it.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoy The Shift and would like to show your appreciation, why not buy me a coffee? Go to www.buymeacoffee.com/The Shift with Sam Baker. You can hear a new episode of The Shift every Tuesday, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like what you hear, please do rate, review, follow, tell your friends, because it really does help other people find us. And if you'd like to know more about my own experience of shifting, my book, The Shift, How I Lost and Found Myself After 40, and you can too, is out now in paperback.